Alright, so I got here a Castle 1721. It is not warranted, so just be careful. Running this motor, you're running 34, 39 or 34, 34. Do not run 1-on-1 with this without doing cooldowns. If you run straight back to back, say 5 to 10 passes without cooldown, you might run into this. And what happened is this motor made overcurrent from the heat, and it desoldered. So this is common if you're doing speed runs, that your wire would come desoldered. And no, it's not an issue with the motor. You just got to remember that anytime you go up on gearing or down on gearing, you got to kind of factor in your run out, your tires, diff ratio. There's a lot of factors into it. A lot of times people think like, oh, have this differential, but GP5 gears on the V2. What's going to happen if I run a 1-to-1 gear ratio? Well, you're going to cause overcurrent with the 1721. So it is common. I have ran into this issue even on 6S. So it's not really an issue with the motor. It's just running higher gears. This is what's really going to happen due to the current that you're increasing. So what I'm going to do on this portion is resolder this wire back on, and we'll see if this motor is still good to go. Hopefully it's good, but we'll see. So let's get to soldering. And just keep in mind when you're soldering, you do want to reheat your solder to about 600 degrees to remelt. Sometimes people like to resolder, but they don't understand, like resoldering, it takes a lot of heat to melt that solder to get it to wick. Solder on Castle wires, they do use copper wires, but they'll be silver in color. And what I'm using here is a Milwaukee soldering iron, which is pretty good and soldering, but some people like to use bigger guns. I'm just give this a try out today. And what I like to do first is get a little solder in there. So now that we get that to liquefy, zoom in for you. You want to add some flux to that. And you can use solder flux paste. I like to use a liquid, so that way we can try to get this to melt. And what I'm trying to do is just reheat this wire. And just keep in mind, if you are doing this, make sure you got a mask on, because lead is poisonous to you. I don't want to be responsible for you or your health, but I'm just advising. I do not have any responsibility to you breathing in lead acid or any of these fumes, so keep that in mind. So you do want to get it hot. Once you get it hot enough, that solder would start to melt. Just add a little bit more to reheat that solder. And a lot of times it is harder to reheat solder because people don't realize that this solder could melt at 450 Fahrenheit, but to resolder melt, it might be 600. Just keep that in mind when you are soldering. Just get that nice and hot. in order for that solder to stick there. And one thing I run into is a lot of times if you don't hold it for a few seconds, that solder could take probably 5 to 20 seconds to reheat. And then you release it, it's going to be stuck. Versus if you didn't release it.